Awesome. Well, hey everybody. Just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Armando. I am the technical director for a digital agency out here called Haven Agency, and we work with the gaming and entertainment industry. So we work with a lot of companies like Bethesda, Blizzard, Riot Games, Live Nation, AEG, Ticketmaster, things like that. So a lot of what we do is web application development. We do promotions, digital promotions, sweepstakes. More recently, we over the last couple of years, we've branched out into building e-commerce applications, building other more robust, we call them gamified experiences. I don't know, it's a marketing term they came up with. Where basically we are building out full-blown authentication systems. We're building out achievement points for certain websites. We're building out experiences rather than just websites. You guys can check us out, our website. We're actually going to be updating it in the next couple of weeks here. It's running an older version, but you can look at some of the stuff we've done on LinkedIn recently. So without that, I want to kind of preface this with, I'm not here in an official capacity with Haven Agency, so I won't be able to take resumes or guarantee you guys are going to be able to get a job with Haven Agency. If you guys do interview for a back-end position and you are called in, you will be interviewing with me specifically, as well as the CTO of the company. So I can answer questions, I can help you guys out, but I can't, do favors. So everybody know that. Sorry, I wish I could. I wish I could hire everybody, but that isn't the case. So kind of what I wanted to go over today is kind of a really informal lecture / discussion about the hiring process and the interview process in which I myself, as well as other colleagues I have gone through. I've picked their brains for the last couple of weeks, talking with them about their experiences, and I want to share that along with what I do and what I've experienced interviewing junior and mid-level developers. Then afterwards, I kind of want to open up the floor to answer any specific direct questions, because there's 40 people in here, so there's probably 40 different experiences you guys have had interviewing for different companies. So I want to kind of give you guys the opportunity to kind of cover everything that I possibly can from my perspective. So with that, I kind of want to go into just some of the basic things, like the basic interview things, right? You guys kind of know when you get called in for an interview, it's like the most nerve-wracking thing ever. And it's like you want to be perfect. You want to get hired for the job, right? So what gets you hired? And a lot of people have this idea that if you're technically sound, if you can answer all these questions, if you can whiteboard problems and solutions, then you're going to get hired, and then they don't. And there's a lot of different things that go into it. So I kind of want to express one of the first things that I want you guys to realize with your applications is your resumes. Before we even talk to you guys, or before we even start getting into the interview process, we're handed probably 30 or 40 resumes. That's like a slow week for us. Just last week I had over 60. So we get a lot of resumes to come in, and unfortunately, it's part of our job, it's part of our salary. So if I have, to meet a deadline in a week and I'm getting given 60 resumes to go through, I have to budget 60 resumes plus my work for the week. So as much as we'd like to spend a lot of time on the resumes, we simply don't. So if there's a lot of information on them, if there's a lot of, if there's like a 6-paragraph introduction, if there's a bunch of random stuff that we have to dig through, odds are it's not going to get the attention that you would expect it to be. So when you guys are working on your resumes, it's always better to have a nice, lean, short resume that kind of outlines specifically what you're working on. For me personally, and for what we hire, we don't look at education. I don't care if you have a master's, because I've interviewed master's people that are awful. And we don't care if you guys have doctorates. We don't care where you guys have come from, as long as you guys can do the job. That's what's important to us. There are companies that do put weight on your education, especially for the junior level developers. But it's more important to have that experience, and it's more important to have what I call the meat and potatoes, which is the projects, the things that show that you actually know what you're doing. If you're going through recruiters, they're going to kind of coach you. I don't know if you guys have gone through recruiters before through LinkedIn. If anyone's called you or has said, hey, we got this really super JavaScript ninja job that we want for you, and they kind of coach you on how to go through things. We're aware of that. We know they're coaching you. We know that the questions that they're giving you or the answers they're giving you are because they've talked to other people that have given them the answers. So when people come in and they answer questions with flying colors, we already know that it's because they've been coached. There's a forum somewhere that has all of our questions on there. So we're aware of that, which is why we don't do that, or why we always ask different questions. So the most important thing is that when we look at your resume, we want to see projects. That's what I want to see. I want to see projects. I want to see what you've worked on. I don't care if it's, has 10 million visitors a month or if it's just you and your friends. I just want to see something that's put out in the world. And I want to see something that exemplifies that you know how to build an application. Maybe not necessarily, it's gonna be the next, you guys are the next Zuckerberg or whatever, but we want to make sure that you guys kind of know what you're doing. It's more important for me to see that you guys actually have a firm understanding of what technology you're using versus what you did in school. There aren't a lot of schools around here, and a lot of the people that apply to us have come from various boot camps and universities. So we've seen every iteration of every school project you guys have done. So if we see the same three, to-do list, movie list, and music playlist generator or whatever, we've seen all of those before. So for us, those don't really, those are for us almost an auto pass for me personally. I want to see stuff that you guys have built, something that you come up with, a solution that you have, a problem that you have. As far as your resume goes, as long as it's spelled right, as long as it looks nice, and as long as it has all that information on there, typically once you actually get to the interview, that's it. That means that you have reached the minimum of being qualified for the job, right? So when you come into the interview, I don't really want to know about the technical qualifications, the technical aspects. I might ask a couple of technical questions, but the most important thing after your resume is going to be what we call soft skills. You guys know what soft skills are? So if you come in and you're dressed in a three-piece, we've had that before. I mean, if I interview, I'm dressed more formally than I normally am in interviews. Normally in the summer, I'm wearing sandals and shorts, and I have guys come in with three-piece suits, or ladies come in with really nice dresses and skirts and stuff, and it just looks really weird. Every culture is different when it comes to working or when it comes to applying to different jobs. Ours is very laid back, and we want to illustrate that to you guys as well. And I think a lot of startup agencies are like that. A lot of corporate jobs are very, you need to wear a suit, you need to have a three-piece, whatever. So it kind of goes based on where you're applying to, and that goes into like researching what field you're getting into. If you're getting into the medical or financial field, those typically you're going to want to maybe see, don't be afraid to ask questions about that. If you get invited to an interview, don't be afraid to ask, what's the dress code? Because you'd rather ask them, hey, can I come in a three-piece suit? And then they're like, sure, why not? And then you don't. So it's always better to ask those kinds of questions. We love when you guys ask questions like that. Don't rapid fire questions to us all the time, but make sure that you guys are aware, or that you guys know what culture you're going into, and be relaxed, because I guess when you're going for an interview, you guys are interviewing us too, right? Don't be desperate for a job. I know it's a hard thing to say, and when you get to the interview, you just want that job. You want to be able to call yourself a web developer. You already are a web developer. It's just you got to find somebody that's worth, not only like that's worth your time, but also somebody that's going to, like, a job that's going to make your life, fun to go to work. Like, I love going to work. I love getting up, going to work, and spending 8 hours a day there because I love the people I work with. I love the culture that we're in. I love the projects that we do. If I got a job that I absolutely hated, it wouldn't matter how much money I made, I'd be miserable. So, it's always important to understand that you're interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing you guys. And so with that, during the interview process, I guess I'm trying to figure out how to approach this because it's always different. Every company is different. Every CTO, every CEO, every company has different business requirements, different requirements in general. I want to talk about a very basic, experience with junior level developers. I think a lot of you guys here are junior, right? Would you consider yourselves less than 3 years experience working? So I want to kind of focus on the junior experience. So one thing I've noticed with a lot of juniors that come in when they interview is they are ready to answer all the technical questions. They're ready to answer, the definition of a struct. They're willing to definitely, if they want a whiteboard, they want to jump right into the whiteboard and they want to show all that, probably because they don't want it to go away because they memorized it the morning before. And for us, it's not really important for juniors to know a lot of the technical aspects of their job. I'm not looking for a junior developer to have all the answers or to be, I would say, I don't want to say my level, but to be on the level of a senior developer. I'm looking for a junior that's hungry to learn. So when you guys come in, you guys are interviewing with us as a junior developer, it's important to express that hunger of wanting to learn. If I ask you to provision an RDS instance on AWS and set up a relational database table, would you be able to do it? And you're like, yeah, absolutely, totally, absolutely can do it. and then we hire you and you can't do it, that's bad. But if a junior comes in and says, hey, I have no idea what that is, I don't even know what an RDS is, that shows that you're willing to learn. So be honest with us and be honest with what you're doing, and always, focus on being you, just you. I want to interview you. I want to talk to you, and I want to make sure that you're a fit for the company. As I said, for you guys, you want to make sure that we're a fit for you as well. So when you guys come in, it's more important to show, or for me, when we hire junior developers, looking for that aspect of I'm willing to learn and I'm determined to learn is more important to me, in my experience, is more important than actually having the technical experience of a junior or of a senior level developer. I'm okay with people saying I have no idea what React is, I have no idea how to destructure, I don't even know what destructuring is, but I'm willing to learn. Here's all my projects, and if I can see that, I'm more than likely going to root for that guy to get hired as a junior developer than I am for the guy that I know is lying through his teeth about everything. So always remember to be honest. Honesty is always the best, and it might not get you the job because we might have a different requirement, but honesty is going to give you that extra point when we're sitting in the conference room and we have the CEO gives us the deadline of lunchtime to hire somebody. It's going to come down to like, well, who was honest to me, who told me the truth, who was cool, and if that person has less experience than the other person, we're more than likely going to go with that person that was honest with us. So honesty is key in everything that you guys do in these interviews. We're not expecting you to be like a professional expert. We're not expecting you guys to come into this interview like with already with the experience that we have. Every new job that you give or have, it's going to be different. You're going to be if I were to go with my 11 years of experience and go into a new job, I'm going to be probably at the same level as you guys, learning their code base, learning their learning their standards, learning everything that they've done before, learning their basically learning their ecosystem of development. So everybody starts off at level 1, no matter what your experience are. So when you get hired, you don't need to know everything, and you don't need to feel like you have to know everything. It's important to just be yourself and to know what you can and be hungry and willing to learn. With that being said, if you're learning, if you guys are learning something, like we like hearing about that. I like hearing when developers are saying, when they say, I've spent the last 9 months in the MERN stack and I've worked with Node and React, but I'm interested in learning .NET, or I'm interested in learning PHP, or I'm interested in doing this. So I started building this project that's built in this language, and this is, because to me it's interesting. I like hearing that because it shows you face yourself with a problem, and you didn't wait for someone to tell you to solve it. You went and solved it yourself, or you're exploring something yourself. And I like that because a lot of times when they're slow at work, we junior developers, we want them to have that hunger of like going in and learning something new. So don't be afraid to tell developers you don't know something, or interviewees you don't know something, or you're not familiar with something, or you're learning something. It doesn't make you seem like an incomplete developer. It doesn't make you any less qualified for the job. If anything, it can help you because we know that you have a willing and a hunger to learn, and you're not scared to tell us that. Because one of the worst experiences we have with junior developers is we say, hey, you cool? And they say, yeah, we're good. And then the day of the deadline comes up and they haven't started it because they have no idea what they're doing and they haven't told us anything. So in the interview, if we see you guys are honest and upfront about that, we'll feel more comfortable with bringing you on as a junior, because we know, like, okay, if these guys get in trouble, we know that they're going to reach out to us. We know that they're going to talk to us, and we know that we can teach them. You guys aren't glass half full guys. You guys are half glass half empty, and we like that. Just a couple more notes here, and then I'll get into answering a few more questions. So I mentioned earlier, like, soft skills, right? It's important. I know it's hard to say. I know it's hard to do in practice, but it's really important to be yourself, to be as relaxed as you possibly can. We know you're nervous. We know that you're trying to impress us, and we're aware of that. And it's our job to make you guys feel comfortable. And if an interviewer doesn't make you feel comfortable, if they're talking down to you, or if they're condescending in any way, that's not a good sign. And I would recommend that you guys end the interview at that point. You guys have that power. We're trying to get you. We're trying to hire you. If we've interviewed you, or if we've brought you in for an interview, that means that we understand that you guys have technically what it takes to work with us. But now we want to make sure that you guys aren't lying. You guys are really who you are, and you guys are cool. You guys are fit in with us. So in that same sense with you guys, if we're making you feel uncomfortable, if we're making it hard for you to talk if we're making you feel stupid, or if we're doing anything that makes you feel, uncomfortable in any way, you let us know we're in the interview, because you guys have that power. And this is, I think, the number one thing that a lot of, especially junior developers, are scared of, is speaking up in an interview. That doesn't mean if you guys disagree with what they do, tell them they're wrong and they're stupid. You know better. But if somebody comes in and makes you feel uncomfortable, and we've had senior developers interview people in the past where they've told us afterwards, hey, I want to work here, but I really don't want to work with that guy. He made me feel a little stupid, and he talked down on my projects. We don't like that, and you guys shouldn't have to put up with that. So it's important for you guys to realize that you are human beings, and you're just as important to this company as anybody else. And if we don't meet your standards, then you guys have the ability to walk away from it. I know it's hard to walk away from a job and walk away from money, but trust me, it'll be a lot easier to do that before you get stuck in a job you hate and you're miserable with the people that you work with. So with that, I want to open the floor to you guys to answer a couple of questions. I know we have plenty of time, but like I said, there's a bunch of different experiences that people have had, so I want to make sure that I'm able to help out as many people as I can by providing as much context as I can with every different, with a bunch of different experiences you guys have. So if you guys have any questions, otherwise I'll just keep talking.
When you get a resume, do you prefer getting a physical hard copy or PDF?
It kind of varies, because for us, we already have your resume. Either our HR person's given it to us, or the recruiters forwarded it to us. We already have your resume. If we've invited you in for an interview, we've already scrutinized the hell out of your resume. So we already have it. I do like when a developer does bring in a physical resume. It just makes it easier. Sometimes me or the CTO we're rushing from one client meeting into this interview and we forget it at our desks. So it makes us feel less stupid if you guys can provide it for us. Just like, oh yeah, awesome, you passed your first test. So having your interview for the first time or bringing a physical copy of the interview is that's totally fine. I would recommend that. Yes.
So the question I started from the beginning of you talking about like the resume, then the first process.
Yeah.
And you said that you get about 30 to 60 resumes a week.
Roughly.
Those resumes that you're receiving, are they kind of going through like an applicant tracking system before you see them, or are they just going straight to you and you just kind of like look at them?
So a lot of them get filtered through we have our HR department, and the guy in charge of that is basically the president of the company. So the recruiter filter everything through him, and then they filter everything through us. Over the last couple of years, our personal work emails have gotten leaked, myself and the CTO's emails, so we get a ton that are just forwarded to us directly. Somehow our emails got forwarded out, probably because we used to physically send, like, hey, we would personally email them, be like, hey man, you did good, here's some advice, and then they probably just leaked their email out to everyone on LinkedIn, and now everyone has our personal emails. So yeah, typically they go through a process. We don't sit down on LinkedIn and scroll through and manually vet them. We get a bunch of emails in from different sources, and then we kind of read through them and we kind of pick the top 3 or 4 out of that big group, and then we go from there. Yeah.
Do you have any idea? Are you using automated machine learning for processing resumes, or
No.
is it all done by humans?
No, as far as I know, anything that comes from the recruitment, I'm pretty sure it's all machine learning. It's all done by them. Us personally, it's all by hand. I don't want a machine picking my next coworker, because
But you still have to get through that initial robot.
Yeah, when they go through the resume process, if they're going through LinkedIn or Glassdoor or anything like that, there's always an internal process that they have. Usually it's keyword management, or for descriptions or whatever. That's the first block through that. Typically, we have our own careers page where you can apply directly for a job on our website. That goes directly to our president and CEO of the company, and then they filter that back to us. Well, they don't filter it; they just forward it to us. So it goes through our process. The more direct way of getting it to not get trapped in those would be to apply. We're such a small company that you're probably more likely to get a response applying through our website than you would through LinkedIn or Glassdoor, because I personally don't like recruiters. And I don't like working with them very much. They're super cool people, but they typically give us 100 resumes where very clearly they're not what we're looking for. So that's kind of
Not very good. recruiters.
Yeah. In the back?
Yeah, so a lot of, you touch on it briefly, but a lot of schools now are even programs, pushing people to have an LinkedIn profile. How important is that in your interview process, and do you care if the candidate doesn't have an LinkedIn profile?
I'm sorry, like a portfolio?
LinkedIn profile.
Oh, LinkedIn profile. It's to me, it's kind of stalkery to have a profile. I like to learn about the interviewee during the interview process because otherwise, what's the point of having the interview? If that's like a super efficient way, like I can just read your LinkedIn profile, look at your endorsements, look at your your job history, and then determine whether or not I want to hire you. I could totally do that, but I'm not going to know the person that I'm hiring, and I'd rather learn that information from them. Typically, I only use LinkedIn to verify certain things. Like if there's a guy that has 6 months experience, but he leads himself, but he like on his resume puts like senior security analyst for Google, I'm gonna be like, wait, how does that work? So I might go on LinkedIn to verify if there's any endorsements or they worked anywhere before. That's really all I use it for. I don't use it to judge anyone based on their merit. I don't really care if they've gone to school or not. If they can do the work, then that's what matters to me. So I think for networking, it's super important. But as far as like for me and for a couple of my other friends that work in other larger agencies in Los Angeles, we don't even look at the LinkedIn profile.
Do you ever follow links that are on a resume?
Oh yeah, all the time. That's step one for us. If we get a portfolio, I will say this: when you send us your resume, we almost always ignore your resume and go directly to a portfolio, whether it's a GitHub profile or an actual portfolio, and we scrutinize the hell out of it. We don't do this to be mean. We don't do this to be jerks. I do this on like MSN.com. I just like to break sites and see what I can get away with. That's just what I like to do. So I always tell people when they want to interview, make sure that everything on your portfolio works. All the links work. If you're advertising, you have live links to certain websites. Make sure that works. I do like clicking it because I like to see the project in motion and see how it functions. I also like to view the code. I'm not sitting there reading code, Friday night drinking wine on my couch, but I like to explore and look at it as much as I can, just to see, do you guys comment? Do you comment your code? Does it look nice? Does it work? What is your thought process behind certain things? And I might use it to target questions. Because like I said, every interviewee is different with me. I always ask them targeted questions about something they've worked on. So I like to be able to have clickable links, and the first test is making sure those links don't 404. So, in the back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Guy in the front and then you in the back.
So I have projects in my resume. I don't have a GitHub because I kind of embarrassed, like making my code is like rock.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, like, was that like a really bad mistake? That you're just gonna assume that he's lying and go to the next one?
No, not really. Like I have a GitHub that I've had since like 2007, and it looks like I'm never on it because all of my projects are private. Because all of the organizations I work with are big names, so it looks like I do nothing on my resume or on my GitHub. So if you look at my GitHub and try to you're gonna be like, this guy's been doing this for 11 years and he has like 3 things. It doesn't make any sense. Starting out as a junior developer, I do believe that having something that kind of illustrates your work is really important because you don't have the merit or the experience to just for someone to look at. They want something to look at. They want, like I guys mentioned before, the meat and potatoes. So if primarily what you have is in GitHub, either way, man, we're gonna see your code. We're going to see it in the interview. We're going to see it when you're working with us. We're going to, right-click and inspect and scrutinize it that way. One way we're going to see it. And with us personally, we don't judge code. Everyone has their own method of doing things and has their own method of solving problems. I'm a firm believer in there's never one solution to any problem. There are many solutions to a single problem. It all depends on the person, right? It's like with art. You can have all of us in this room draw a portrait of somebody, draw a portrait of Johnny Depp, and you're going to get 40 different versions of Johnny Depp. Doesn't mean that they're wrong, and it doesn't mean that one's better than the other. It's just 40 different ways of doing it. So as far as like your code being bad or being embarrassed with your code, I'm embarrassed with my code. I think everybody here has that like self-conscious, I don't want anyone looking at it because it looks horrible, but it's important for us to see it, and we want to see your thought process. And if there's something you're doing like a bad habit or a bad practice or something, as bringing you on, that's something we fix. Like I said before, we don't hire people expecting them to be perfect. We hire them expecting them to be willing to learn and grow. And when you work from our company or any other company that hires you, you're going to learn their ecosystem. You're going to learn their system, their method of doing certain things. So there's always going to be adjustments, but your junior job is going to be where you learn everything for the first time. You're going to learn, commenting properly. You're going to learn all the basics at that job. So don't be embarrassed of your code. Whatever you have, man, share it. Be proud of it. If you have a completed project, even if you think it's total garbage, share it, because I guarantee you it's a lot better than everyone that's never done anything before. So totally share it. Don't be afraid to share it. Nobody that's worth working for should talk trash about it, because it's not. It's not. I guarantee you, it's not bad. And then you had another question over there?
Yeah, when you're looking at portfolios and resumes, things like that, what types of projects do you like to see? Because you mentioned you don't like saying the same things that everybody's doing in
Yeah.
boot camp, right? I'm coming out of the boot camp, right?
Yeah.
So what kinds of projects would you like to see?
I like seeing things that are. I don't want to say like a unique expression of your personality, because it might not be. But I like seeing problems being solved in a realistic way, right? I like seeing things like, for example, we had an interviewee. She came in. Actually, we have hopefully hear back from her soon. She did really well, but she was a senior level developer that we were hiring on, and one of the projects that really sparked our interest in her was she was planning her friend's wedding, and I guess there's no other app that exists for wedding planning or something. So she built a full-blown React Node app that she synced up with all of her friends, all of the bridesmaids or whatever, and then they all kind of went in and helped. They had a commenting system so people can comment on different things, image sharing. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. It was rough around the edges. It didn't have really any like cute design. It was just roughly just bootstrap, thrown on with this thing. But it solved a realistic problem, and it showed that like she was presented with a problem and she solved it. So stuff like that, things that resolve around solving a particular problem. It doesn't have to be unique. Like I said, I don't know if any wedding planning application exists, but something that kind of illustrates that you solve a problem that you have. That's what I like to see. I just don't like, to-do lists or movie rating website, things like that. Like all that stuff. I mean, I just want something you built. It doesn't have to be unique, just something that you built.
Some people design and make their resumes pretty, while some keep it simple with no design and color. Does making the resume look pretty matter, or is it keeping it simple be enough to make it more eye-catching?
That's me. I think if anything, I don't like if I get two resumes, right? One of them is like built in HTML and it's printed out, looks super dope. It's on like glossy paper and all that, and then I get someone that just printed out a bullet point of what they've done. This one might get like a gasp out of me, like a, that's cool, but it's not gonna it's not gonna matter to me, because it's like, I guess this kind of goes into a different sect of web development. It's all about finding the right tool for the job, right? So when you hire a junior developer, a lot of juniors like to just jump right into it. They're like, yeah, we can throw React, we can build a Lambda microservice, and we can interconnect that with a machine learning algorithm that does all that. And it's like, dude, we're just building the sweepstakes. Like, we don't need to get that crazy. Like, let's just build it in HTML, CSS, and call it a day. So when you look at those resumes that look super nice versus the resumes that just print out bullet points, it looks nice and it doesn't really add anything. It doesn't take anything away, but it's all that extra work you put in when you could have spent that time providing me with substance. Because a lot of times the really nice portfolios tend to be more padded. They tend to it's like if you guys ever wrote an essay in high school and you needed the 500-word minimum, and the last 50 words you're like, and so in summation of my conclusion to this, whatever, you're just trying to get padded out. That to me is what it appears like. But it's not going to gauge one way or another for me.
I have a question.
Yes.
You have two people at the interview, and you give them some exercise to do. They have laptops, and they both did, imagine that they all were past this.
Sure.
So you look at their code, and you need to decide which person you want to hire. Both of them have code. What would you look at first? I mean, they both passed, but what would you look at first, and how will you make a choice which person to hire after?
That's a good question, and we run into that more times than I like, because it's really hard. Because a lot of times we get two candidates that come in at different times. They both hitting every point that they can. Their projects are really good, We liked them, we enjoyed them, we played Mortal Kombat with them in the lounge. Like, these guys are like super cool. We love these guys, right? And I'm like, yeah, we can totally work with them. And then a lot of times the first question is like, well, do we have it in the budget to hire both? 99% of the time, the CEO is like, pick one. So then it becomes this hard motion of like, well, both these guys were qualified, both these guys did really good. How do we determine who to hire? And so in your example, let's just assume they're both exact same. Everybody liked them, they were perfect fit. Everything was like, how do you discern that? And for us, it's a really, really, really hard thing to do because there's really no way to determine that because most everyone that interviews with us are qualified in their own way. Like I said, if you get brought into the interview, you already have the bare minimum requirement of doing the job that we want you to do. It's just a matter of fitting in. So a lot of times what we might do is we might have a third round of interviews where we'll bring in a senior developer from either front end or back end, whoever we're hiring, and then have them interview and ask them specific questions. We call them tiebreakers, where we might just see like how does this person do? And we've had tiebreakers end up in ties. And so it becomes really difficult, and I think that's one of the hardest things, to being in a managerial position is being fair, because at that point it's like, well, I guess I'll just flip a coin because we're both equal. So we don't like doing that. I don't like doing that. So typically from that point on, it usually takes like 3 weeks for us to come up with a decision, because every morning we'll sit down for an hour and like try to figure it out, and we just can't. And a lot of times we hope one of them gets an offer. So it's easier for us, so we don't have to make the decision. Sometimes it happens, which is great. Other times it doesn't. So a lot of times what it comes down to is we bring it up on the board. We have every designer, we have front end guys, back end guys look at every aspect of everything. We have them, if they've designed their portfolio, we have the front end guys look at the portfolio. Do they have a strong design background? All this stuff it's inconsequential, but if we're getting to that point where we can't make a decision, we have to start figuring out some way of gauging whether or not to hire them. And like I said, I don't like doing the coin toss thing. I don't like doing the like, well, let's just throw a dart at the board and see who we get. We like to find some reason to not hire them, or to hire one person over the other. But typically, if we hire one person, that other person we put on the back burner. And if in 30 or 60 days we say, hey, we want to hire another person, we don't even go through the interview process. We just call that person up and we're like, hey, please tell me you don't have a job, because we want you to work for us. That's how actually I got hired. When I started working there like 4 years ago, I was down to the wire with me and this other guy. They ended up going with the other guy before me, and then about 3 or 4 months later, the CTO calls and says, "Hey, are you still looking for a job?" And I was like, "No, I already got a job." And he's like, "That's a bummer. Well, what if we offered you this and did this and did this? Would you come?" And I was like, "Hell yeah!" So, so it works. You have a question here?
I had a question, because you said that about the interview process, how important it is to be honest, right?
Yes.
And then, like, if you don't know something, definitely the thing is to know that you don't know it, but you really know it.
Absolutely.
But I've heard, and I know everyone's different when it comes to like their process of interviewing an individual.
Sure.
But I've also heard it where they've said that if somebody says something like that to them, but also where that's going to require a lot of hand-holding, and that they're already busy with their own schedule. Sometimes do you think about that too, when someone's like,
Sure.
they don't know how to do something?
Yeah, and I mean the thing is that when you're hiring a junior developer, there's always going to be a hand-holding process. There's always going to be a babysitter. You can't avoid it. I've mentored specifically probably 10 junior developers over my career, and not one of them was like, "Yeah, I got it. I can do this, no problem. It's easy peasy." I've always had to sit there and explain our process, explain how to do something, or explain a technology that they've never worked with before. It always happens. It doesn't matter. So I would rather know, if I'm hiring somebody, I would rather know that they don't know React, so that when we go into our managers meetings every other week and we're starting to delegate resources, I can say, all right, so John over here, he's a new hire, but he doesn't know React, but he wants to learn React. So I'm going to put him with one of the senior front end guys, and then he can learn and start building out basic components so he can learn. So I know that when I put him on the project, I'm already allotting that time. So I like to always assume that when someone's a new hire, whether they're junior, mid-level, or senior, there's going to be some level of hand-holding. It's just a matter of how long. Like for juniors, by the 6-month mark, you shouldn't be having, you should be able to handle most tasks by yourself. That's like our gauge for that. Senior developers, like you have like a month to get up to speed, because that's what it should take. So it really depends. But I would rather someone be upfront and honest with me because it saves me the heartache. Because when I have developers that lie, that say they know something, and I just blindly trust them, when they get written up, I'm the one that's writing them up. I'm the one that's disciplining them, and I feel bad because I've told my colleagues, like, yeah, I trust this guy. This guy's done his job. I have no reason to not trust him. And then I come in Monday with my coffee, and I get called up to the CEO's office asking why a deadline was missed. So I would much rather know the weaknesses of a developer, or something that a developer needs to work on beforehand. And like I said, it's not gonna make you lose the job. It's not gonna be like an automatic no. I would just rather know what I need to spend more time on.
It can prevent you from getting fired 2 months after
100%.
you're hired too.
100%. We have junior developers that have worked with us, and then on their 90-day probationary period, we tell them they didn't make the cut. Not because they were juniors, but because they didn't tell us they didn't know anything, or because their resume, they're like, yeah, I can totally set up a CloudFront, distribution and throw CD and SSL on a static S3 site, and then they're asking me every 2 seconds how to do it, or they're asking someone else every 2 seconds, or I find out that one of the senior developers did it, and he's going to get the credit for it. That stuff can happen too. I'd rather you guys be honest and be open about what you don't know. That way we can teach you, because your first 6 months of your job is all learning. You're going to be learning. I tell everybody this: you're going to learn more in your first 6 months of any real job than you will in any amount of school, whether it's 4 years, 6 years in the master's, or 6 months in boot camp. You're going to learn more on your first job than you ever did.
During the interview process, how do you talk about your projects? Is it appropriate to pull out my own laptop, start showing them my projects, and how in depth do you go? Because I don't want to bore them too much with
Sure.
talking how I implement the unit and integration testing.
That kind of stuff excites us, so don't worry about that. We'll be like, hell yeah, I want to know about that. So yeah, that's a good question. And yes, totally, bring your laptop. If you have stuff to show on your laptop, 100% bring it. My only recommendation is, if you're going to load something on Heroku, make sure that it's provisioned and ready to go on the interview. I don't want to sit there for 30 minutes waiting for, like, hold on guys, it's building. Give me like 2 minutes and it'll be done. Make sure everything's built and loaded and ready to go. If you don't want to pay for the Heroku resources, make sure it's running locally. Just show us something. We have a big, huge, 85-inch screen in our conference room with HDMI. You just plug it in if you want to walk through anything. Typically, as far as like talking too much, like I don't want to know too much about, the entire application. I'd love to hear about your application all day, but we really don't have a lot of time. So I would recommend that you prepare one segment that you're most proud of, one piece of the application that you're most proud of, and go into explicit detail on how you built it, like your thought process, how you're going through it, like what you did, like what troubles you went through, what concerns you had, why you built it this certain way, anything you can think of about that one component. I'd rather spend 5-10 minutes on that, and then we'll ask questions, because odds are, like I said, we're going to be scrutinizing the hell out of your resume beforehand. So odds are I've already looked at this particular project, and I already have like 10 questions about it that I'm going to ask you, but I want to hear what your take is, because you might answer 9 of them. So yeah, absolutely, bring your laptop, bring whatever personal projects you have. Just make sure they're running beforehand, and then don't have to wait for provisioning service. In the back?
Can you talk about, like for your company, right? What's a typical work week like? Like, do you evaluate their Git commit every day? Do you weekly meeting this thing? I just want to understand the workflow.
Yeah. Now this is a really good question, and this brings me a really good point. I had mentioned earlier, when you guys are interviewing with the company, we're also interviewing with you. And this question, I love hearing this question. I want to hear you guys ask these questions, because the most important thing is, why would you want to work for a company that I hate, right? Why would you work for a company that I don't want to talk about? And that's your first clue into whether or not this is a good company to work for. So I just wanted to illustrate that. That's a really good question, and I get really excited when I hear that question, because it shows that you're engaged in the interview. But to answer your question, what a work week is like for us, typically we do have our weekly. We have 3 different meetings during the week. We have our weekly managers meeting, which is all the project managers, myself, CTO, kind of discuss resources. And then there's a secondary meeting where all of the project managers kind of delegate resources. And then during that time, we start figuring out who's part of what project. Then we go and we pass it out however we need to. When you're a junior developer, we give you tasks. Usually you're going to be shadowing a senior or a mid-level developer, and you'll be either I or the senior will be handing you tasks out. You'll be working on specific tasks, and then you'll be PRing them into your own branch. So we do PR reviews. A lot of times we'll sit down with you and talk about a PR, talk about changes, talk about suggestions, or maybe get your input on something. afterwards, then we go through the whole approval process. So that happens. It's not like a weekly thing. That kind of happens whenever it comes up. It could be a weekly thing. It could be a daily thing. It really just depends. But we're not doing this thing where every hour you're evaluated on how well you're doing. We just kind of do it whenever we can.
At the interview, what kind of questions do you expect people ask?
I mean, it's a conversation, right? Like, we're interviewing you, you're interviewing us. Ask me questions about the company. Ask me what is my favorite thing about it. In fact, one of the best questions someone ever asked me was, "What's the worst thing about this job?" And I was like, "Oh, I mean, there's several, but I don't. It's a good question because it's like it makes me think about my own job and reevaluate my job. Like, do I really like working here? And I do, and I always do. But you don't want someone to answer that by saying nothing. There's nothing bad about this job. Maybe you get paid more. Like, it's such a stupid question or a stupid answer to that question. But for me, like, I was like, yeah, well, sometimes I'm here till 10 o'clock at night, and it sucks. And sometimes I have to tell my employees, we have to work on the weekend because we got to hit this deadline. That sucks. I hate doing that because I don't want my employees and I don't want my developers to have to spend time. But sometimes that's just a part of the job. So I would rather be upfront with you and be like, nah, nothing, everything's cool. I don't like saying that because it's not true. There are negative things to working with any job, and I can list several. And one of them would be, yeah, like, what's your least favorite thing about the job? What's one thing, how's the pay? Obviously, we're not going to tell you what we're paid, but we'll tell you it's competitive, it's decent, or hopefully someone will be honest and tell you it's garbage. But typically it's the opportunity for the interviewee to be honest with you, and you, since you're interviewing us, can determine how honest we are with you. So, any question, it works out pretty well.
Thank you.
I think I saw a question here. Yeah.
It's a question, because like, even in the development community, there's these debates about, we can't versus university. I know you said that you really care for that.
Yeah.
But like, if it came down between two people, does that become something like a changing factor? I only asked it when I interviewed for Microsoft, they straight up told me like, well, it was a boot camp, right? It just shows me that you've only invested a short amount of time because somebody who did or you got their master's, hey, but invested more time than you did.
Sure.
Does that ever play like a factor?
For us, no. For corporate jobs, for larger enterprise jobs like Microsoft, Google, Facebook, they can afford to be that way. They can afford to go with that. And I would say that for a lot of jobs, they probably, like, I personally don't use that as a barrier. Like, I'm not going to look at someone with boot camp experience versus someone that's a fresh graduate from UCR or something and weigh the UCR graduate better than the boot camp or vice versa. But that does happen in corporate environments. It's just a fact of life in the tech industry. A lot of companies are still holding on to the old hat idea that education, having an education that was outdated 50 years ago is still more important than actually knowing what you're doing now, for some reason. That's their right, that's their prerogative, and I don't want to say it doesn't happen and that it's not true, because it is. Kind of where you go, if you go for more corporate jobs, Facebook, Google, etc., that does happen. But I feel like there's a shift in our industry where we can't be as picky anymore because there's so much information available for free now that I've had people that they dropped out of high school interview for me, and they've done better than master's graduates from UCI. So if we're given the opportunity to interview, and that's why I like the face-to-face interviews, because it gives me the opportunity to learn more about that person. So to answer your question, I wouldn't base a boot camp graduate over a university graduate. I would look at the merit of the work, the quality of the work from each graduate, because there's no difference in quality from my experience. There's no difference in the quality of work from a fresh graduate from university than there is from a fresh graduate from boot camp. They're both about equally underqualified or not qualified enough at that point. And that's fine because you're a junior, you're not supposed to know anything, but there's no difference. Like, I'm not going to, like, a guy from UCR that spent 4 years there isn't going to give me an exceptionally better portfolio than the guy that graduated from Learning Fuse or Coding Dojo or something like that. Typically, I see that more self-taught developers and the few developers that we've hired that are from boot camps, they've wowed us because they went above and beyond their boot camp and have built things on their own that have shown us that they have a command over the language that they're interviewing for, and that they have a hunger to continue learning. But like I said, we don't even look at their boot camp, or we don't even look at their education. We found out like 2 months later at lunch where she's like, I went to Trilogy, and I'm like, whoa, you went to boot camp? I had no idea. So yeah, to answer your question, it does matter depending on where you go. Microsoft and Google for sure has a heavier weight. For other digital agencies or more modern tech startups, probably not as much.
And then guys, quick follow-up.
Yeah.
In your company, how many of the employees are college graduates versus non-college graduates? Would you say there's more college graduates than non-college graduates there, or?
I've never been asked that question, so I gotta think about it. There are, I would say probably 30 to 40% of our employees are college graduates. Everyone else is either self-taught or boot camp or they change careers.
Are there any nervous behaviors people have that you really find off-putting?
I'm sorry?
Are there any nervous behaviors people have during an interview that you find really off-putting?
Not at all. I have really bad anxiety. In fact, I'm like barely holding it together right now. So,
Really bad what?
so sorry?
You have really bad what?
Anxiety.
Oh.
So
You don't look like it.
trust me, I'm a nervous shark underneath. This is all just years and years of experience. That's all it is. No, it has happened. We've had interviews where somebody, you know, and the thing is, like I said before, it is my job in the interview is to make you feel as comfortable as possible. And I can recognize when someone has anxiety. I can recognize when someone has social anxiety because I myself have it. So I understand like the fidgeting, the looking around, direct eye contact. I understand those cues. Maybe not everyone has those cues because they might not experience it. But I try to make it, if I notice that someone's really uncomfortable, or I notice that during the technical questionnaire process of the interview that they're stuttering or they're talking fast or they're, you know, I know they know the answer, I might take it back and say, hey, I noticed you have a tracer badge on your bag. Do you play Overwatch? Well, we work with Overwatch. And then we talk and I try to keep it, you know, to the point where they're comfortable enough, then I might bring it back and go, I'm sorry, I took you off track. You were talking about this. So I try to be as accommodating as I possibly can be when I notice anxiety and nervousness. And typically, yeah, it's embarrassing situations if someone you know farts or burps or has a weird tone shift in their voice or something. I don't bring attention to it. I'm not gonna be like, oh, you farted, ha! Like, I try to move past it as much as possible because it doesn't matter. You know, I'm not gonna. I know you're already nervous, and I know that probably just killed all of what whatever confidence you had. So my goal is to keep that confidence and to keep that energy as high as possible. So there's nothing off-putting to me when it comes to nervousness. The only off-putting situations are if people are jerks. That's it. And that's not really a nervous thing. That's just you're a jerk. So, you had a question?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So,
Oh.
I wasn't sure if you were speaking or if you were
I
speaking.
didn't see your hand. I'll do you first, and then we'll come back.
Oh, okay. So my question was, since I graduated from boot camp, I've been building my portfolio independently, and I was wondering about how many projects do you think it's good to have on the portfolio that you independently built? Because you know each of those takes time.
Yeah.
So I was wondering what would be like a good, and I only want with the best ones, right? So how many do you think I should have on there?
Like 50. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Don't put 50. And no, even if you have 50 really good projects, don't put 50 in your resume. I have to look through all of them, and it's very time consuming. Typically, like the sweet spot for me, like I mean, honestly, like we had a lady from boot camp graduate. We hired her about a year and a half ago, and she had one really good project on her resume, and it blew us away. And it was really good. So the answer to that question is one, and no more than like 5 or 6.
Well, these two that are really good. So.
That's for me personally. That's good enough. I just want to. I want to be able to look at it. 2 or 3 projects I can look at, and that gives me a good idea that you have at least an understanding of how to build a project. If I have questions, I can ask.
let's say you get rejected for a job that you really wanted.
Mhm.
How long would you wait before like applying for that same company again?
I'd apply immediately. That's me personally. I'm very. If I want something, I'm very ambitious. Like I mentioned before, I applied to Haven 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. I wasn't hired in the first round, but I got picked up as a follow-up. I applied to them 5 other times beforehand, and I got turned down every single time. So, if you really want to work somewhere, if your goal is to work at a particular company, don't ever give up. Just keep applying. Don't like apply every week. You get denied, and then you're like send an email as you're walking out of the lobby. You know, maybe just wait a couple, maybe 30 days. Like what I like from developers, if they don't get hired the first time, a lot of times they'll follow up with, well, is there something that I can do to improve, or what was it about my interview that didn't qualify me, or whatever. I might give them an opportunity. I might tell them, hey, a lot of it was just your command of PHP wasn't good enough. You know, you spent a lot of time in Node, so all of your projects were Node. When we did talk about PHP, you didn't really show that you had any real experience with PHP, and unfortunately, this job is like 90% that. So maybe take the time, learn PHP, take some courses, build a project in PHP, do something with Laravel or something, and then when you apply again, that would be the first project on there. And usually, I have a pretty good memory for people that apply. I'm not good with names. I'm good with like patterns of names. So I might not remember you specifically, but I'll be like, oh, Tony. I interviewed Tony like a couple months ago. This might be the same guy. So I'm good with that. So if I see that, and even if I don't remember that, but in the interview I'm like, oh, hey, we interviewed like a couple months ago, and then I'll see you did PHP. That would be a good indication that A, you took direction, and B, you saw a problem and you solved it yourself. So it shows yourself, you know, your problem skills, problem solving skills. So that's a good one.
How would you compare, I know we talked a lot about like projects and independent projects and things like that.
Yeah.
So how would you compare if somebody maybe doesn't have as many independent projects, but they have significant contributions in open source? Like they've done features,
Yeah.
they've done, you know, more than just like typing.
Yeah, I mean, experience is experience. Open source is great because not only are you contributing to a project, but I'm also an avid supporter of open source. But it also shows that you have experience working with a team. Odds are, if you're working with a competent open source team, you're dealing with PR contributions, you're dealing with code reviews, you're dealing with, you know, basically kind of the first 6 months that we spent with junior developers, you're already doing with that. So it kind of gives you like a higher, I won't say a higher gauge, but it gives you that experience where we can say, well, if it comes down to it, like before, where you guys are neck and neck, we can say, okay, well, this person has worked in open source for 9 months, and we can see their PR history. We can see that they're talking with the contributor directly. They're bouncing ideas off other developers. I might go with this person because this person has shown that they already have that experience of working with teammates. So personal experience or personal projects with open source contributions, either of them are fine. Like I said, if it came down to a tiebreaker, having that experience working with teams would probably be a good tiebreaker for us. Any other questions?
Let's say you spent a lot of time working on this project for like a company or something.
Yes.
But then they end up not using like your code. Would you still like add that project to like your experience, or would you just leave it out?
Oh no, don't leave it out. If you build something, unless there's like an NDA or something, don't include it in your portfolio. But you're more than welcome to talk about it in an interview, as long as it's not like, as long as you're not binded by any legally like NDA or something like that. Definitely, even if the company doesn't use it, definitely talk about something you built, because it could be a prototype. You can list it as a prototype for a feature that was built, and even though your code wasn't used, you helped prototype the component and visualize or conceptualize what could ultimately be done or realized through the actual application. So having that experience and showing that, definitely, I would include that. That'd be a nice little tidbit to talk about in doing that. Yeah, absolutely.
Quick question.
Oh, yes.
Like types of interviews
Sure.
that companies give you, like remote jobs or you know emails or anything like that. Is there anything that's like kind of like out of the ordinary when interviewers or a company is reaching out to you? Like I heard like some companies, they give you like some code to figure out, and you send that code for them to figure that you can figure out the code and it never hits you up again. Like, and they just use that code because they want. Like, is that something
that's smart for sure? But no, I do. Typically, there are red flags that I see. One of those red flags is definitely if a company hits you up and is like, hey, we have this problem with sorting, it's totally random, but we're trying to aggregate data between someone that sent out emails. And we're trying to get a number of, what would your experience be? And that to me might be a red flag, because it's like, that's a very specific thing to ask in an interview. Like, why would I need to know how you sort something? Like, that's a red flag, and it does happen. I've heard a lot of startup companies do that. That's how they offset hiring a developer, is they just have a big, massive hiring spree where they just send out bits and chunks of like their features to 50 or 60 junior developers. They code it, and they're like, all right, awesome, you didn't make the cut, but we'll keep you in touch for the next one. And then all of a sudden,
a form of like crowd coding.
Basically, yeah. It's probably I don't know if it's illegal, but it's definitely morally questionable, 100%. We don't do that. I don't do that specifically. I don't know if I mentioned it today, but I've mentioned it in the past with other people here. I detest whiteboard interviews. I detest whiteboard interviews. I hate asking technical questions, like define a struct, or what's the difference between a private and public. Like all those things those are things you can memorize. Those are things you can learn. And like I said, the recruiters probably already coached you on what to answer. So those don't gauge whether or not you're a good developer. And when we do our coding challenge, we always do something that's very generic. We always do like, it might be like, I'm trying to think, build a form using any language of your choice, and that form should have an AJAX request that submits to an API. Or it might be something like build a little microservice thing that I don't know. We'll give you a text file, so it parses a text file, and the text file might be like Haven Rocks or something. Like we do stuff that's inconsequential. Like we're not going to steal your knowledge. If we want you on our team, we're going to hire you, and we're not going to do something that like the black hat in me says that's really smart, but the moral guy in me is like that's horrible. I would never do that. Those are definitely red flags to watch out for. Totally, we don't do that. I have heard that it exists. So I would be careful with something like that.
Okay. I'm just trying not to waste our time or people's time or anything like that.
Yeah, if you're talking from the process of like how we determine someone, like someone's like ability or how adept they are to a particular language, we do very simple coding challenges that illustrate that they have at least a basic command of how to use the language in a very basic way. So like building a form is a fairly simple thing. We want to see how you handle post requests, how you handle records, things like that. If you can handle that, great, awesome. But it's not going to be like we're going to give you a component that we've built in the past and want you to rebuild that component from the ground up. We don't do that. That's done. In the back.
Can I have some more clarity? You say you work for a temp agency?
Not a temp agency. We're a digital agency.
Digital agency.
Yes.
Can you explain the pipeline? What's your product? Who you sell it to?
We don't. Our product is our developers. We're a team. So basically, we're like a rapid upscaling company. So, like I said before, we work with a lot of gaming companies like Bethesda, Riot Games, and Blizzard. And so we're not a part of those companies. What we are is Riot might say, "Oh crap, E3's in 3 months, and we have no resources available because we're trying to get this next patch out." Our web team, just us. So for us, we typically don't have like a physical product. We don't build a CMS. We don't build a SaaS. We don't build an application of any way, shape, or form. We build whatever the company wants us to build. So if Bethesda wants us to build, something for them, we'll build it for them. Things like that.
Okay, so there's like contracting.
Yeah. So agencies. So the way I like to describe it is that working for an agency is like being a 1099 contractor, but with a W-2 and with guaranteed work. So like if you freelanced in the past to do websites for clients, imagine not having to go out and pitch, and imagine not having to go out and find clients. Someone else does all that for you, and then it just gets tossed down to you to build. So, yeah.
Final
Sure.
Would you say that like Reviture is like a competition that does exactly what you do, or somewhat?
No. I'm going to be a bit of a cheerleader. Nobody does what we do. We're known for doing. We're known as the miracle workers in this area because we have done a lot of really cool stuff in a short amount of time. We don't have a marketing team really. We don't advertise ourselves. We don't advertise on LinkedIn. We don't, spend thousands of dollars on PPC and SSO to get our SEO to get our name out there. Everything is by referral. We get hired by clients like Blizzard and Riot because of the work that we do, not because we're out advertising and selling something. Like we're shifting into marketing, and we're shifting into that now because we're getting a lot bigger, and we kind of want to be, we kind of want to play with the big dogs in LA. But we're the kind of people where it's like you can hire, you can hire a whole consulting firm for $10 million to build you something. We'll do it for half that and in 3/4 of the time. So that's kind of what we pride ourselves on. But yeah, I wouldn't compare us to someone like Reviture or anything like that because what we do is very specific. Like we're more of a boutique than we are like we'll build you anything. We're very selective with our clients and our contracts. and we only take on projects that are like that we really like. Oh yeah.
So you're saying like Blizzard just came out to like, hey, can you build us an app or our website, or did you actually like go after them?
No, like I said, we didn't. Blizzard was probably one of the first companies that I worked with specifically, and basically, I don't know what happened on Blizzard's end, but basically they're like, you guys have heard of Heroes of the Storm, right?
Yeah.
So a couple years ago, they had this thing that was called Heroes of the Dorm, and it was like basically just like they were like their collegiate. They were taking Heroes of the Storm and going in the esports collegiate route by trying to enforce it to being like to actually having sponsored college teams play Heroes of the Storm. I don't know what ended up happening, but basically, at the time, Jay Moore, who was like the lead creative guy or the lead digital asset, I forget what his official title was, but he called our CEO up and was like, I heard about you guys, and we have this project that had a year deadline, but we need it in 3 months. Can you guys do it? And so early on in our company, we had a philosophy of say yes now and figure it out later. So it was one of those times of staying up till 4 or 5 in the morning, working 7 days a week, basically living in our office, just coding away, and we ended up getting it done better than they could have imagined, and that started a 3-year relationship with Blizzard Entertainment. And because of that got our name out. Me and Jay Moore sold us to everyone we talked to at E3. So now we go to E3 every year. We talk with other game companies. People talk to us. They want to work with us. So there's a lot of other. So I mean that's kind of what we do.
Follow up. So would you say like most of your work is still like that, where like people are just like, oh, we only got 4 months to do this, call Haven up, or like...
Yeah, but we're a lot more selective about it now. So it's not one of these things where we're like, oh my god, a job, hell yeah, come on guys, let's go. It's more or less like, yeah, we have 4 months to blow, but we're not. We try not to do that because it's not fair. We did all that hard work in the beginning to make sure that the people that work with us now don't deal with that ever again. And so we kind of just share war stories with everybody. We still have tight deadlines a lot of times. That's any agency you work with, whether it's us, Accenture, Reventure, any company that deals with agencies. Typically, an agency is hired by a company because they need to make a deadline for whatever reason. So we always deal with tight turnarounds. We always deal with projects like that, but it's less and less now because our projects are a lot bigger now. So we don't. It still happens, but not as bad. Any other questions? No. We are not very big. We have less than 20 people working with us.
And the projects you do are not uniform, you just mess up whatever you provide. And obviously the team of 20 people have the experience of working on all different types of
that's a big statement. We working for an agency. A lot of agencies typically have their primary tech stack, and we are the same way. Like our primary tech stack is Node, PHP, React. But we have other clients that come in with other requests. Sometimes it's .NET. Unfortunately, we had to do Golang once and Angular. So we take all these different things, and part of what makes agencies so desirable for companies is our ability to scale up. So we won't take a job that we can't do. Like if a company wants us to build like AR tech or like an AR app or something, we won't do it because we don't have anybody on our team that has that skill set or have that tool set available to do it. Even though that might be like, hey, that's a pretty dope idea, let's, figure it out. Like me and the CTO right now are looking into taking courses on AR and like looking into exploring that because we would like to be able to offer that and work on that. But we don't just take any job like I mentioned. Companies that want to work with us, they hit us up, and as long as everything works and we mesh well with them, we'll take them on. But we pride ourselves in being such a small team because we work very well together and we're very efficient, and we haven't missed a deadline once. We haven't messed up once. We messed up a couple times, but but for the most part, our clients are very happy with us, and they like the fact that it's the same 4 guys working on something, and we can provide the same consistent, amazing quality work that we give them. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. It really just depends, but. That's why I've talked with several people here about hiring directly, like junior developers with Haven, and it's very hard because we're not really a junior-friendly company right now. I mentioned in my new position, I'm trying to figure out a way to make it so we can hire interns, so we can do it that way, so we can start bringing in some of the younger developers and maybe offload some knowledge that we have for them. But it requires, it's very fast-paced. It's very not for the faint of heart. I've had several anxiety attacks over the years working, like not kidding, very bad anxiety attacks. I've had to take sabbaticals from work for things. Like, it's a very stressful job, and I think any agency job is going to be pretty stressful. But we try to offload it as much as possible, and typically the junior developers are never ever going to experience that. Me personally am very protective over the junior developers that we hire, and I don't want to put them in a position where you're going to be sitting with me at 4 a.m. on something. Like, that's me. You're not going to see that. You might be coming in and I'm leaving, but you're never going to be put in that position where you have to feel the same level of stress as us and the senior level developers go. But it's great. We all go out to happy hour. We all get really drunk with each other sometimes, and having that small knit team makes us, like I said, a well-oiled machine. We get things done. We all trust each other, and so right now with this new initiative of trying to hire more junior developers, we are trying to expand, but it's not something that's going to happen anytime soon. It's just something we'd like to do. Yeah.
What's your company's website?
HavenAgency.com. It's kind of an older site because, like I said, we don't really advertise. We're currently working on building it up, so there's a lot of older stuff on there. But that's our site.
The website will be the same even when you update it, right?
Well, we're modernizing it. The last time that we built that site was.
I mean, it'll be the same domain though, even after you.
Oh yeah, same domain, no matter what. Yeah.
I just wanted to bookmark it.
Yep, by all means. Yeah. We're on LinkedIn, so whenever we get around to actually putting our new site up, it'll be there.
I tried Googling it, but it came up with a whole bunch of halfway houses and like women's shelters. And,
we would like to, yeah, maybe, but no, we're. I think Haven's a very common name, so. Yeah.
Are you guys currently hiring?
Currently, right now, we are not actively hiring. We have a policy of always accepting resumes and holding on to them. It makes it easier for us, so we can kind of earmark the people that we're interested in interviewing. We're only really looking specifically for senior level developers, and we're very, very selective with who we're hiring right now. Typically, our hiring hiring season is usually around like between August and November. That's when things settle down. E3 is over. All the major summer pushes for the concerts and stuff, it's all done, so we have some downtime. So we try to do that between them. This is the first year that we've had where we've kind of been like, yeah, we're totally fine. And then our CEO's like, yeah, here's like 15 SOWs that are approved. And we're like, oh shit, we should have hired people. So that might change, but typically around that is when we start hiring. Any other questions? Okay.
Is salary negotiating, is that a thing for junior devs? And is it?
Dude, yeah, 100%.
Is there like etiquette or something?
Yeah, don't ask for $1 million. Typically, has anyone here ever bought a car? And like deal with like sales guys or whatever, and like the number one rule is never pay sticker for a car. So that's the same thing with hiring for going for a job. Never settle for what they offer you, right? The job for the company or the HR department has two jobs: protect the company and make the company money. Like that's what they do, right? So the contract between you and me. Sorry. Make sure I'm getting blown up here. Just make sure everything's okay. Yeah, we're fine. I'm fine. So I'm getting all these Slack notifications from work, but it's all fine. Everyone's just sharing Photoshops. So, anyways. Got thrown off track. What were we talking about? Salary, right? Salary. Okay. So typically, when you go for you never pay sticker for a job, and when you work with a company, HR departments protect their responsibility is to protect the company and make the company money. So the contract between you, the employer, or you, the employee, and the employer, the company, is you're going to do a set amount of work for a set amount of money, right? And the agreement there is that if I'm going to say I'm going to pay you $60,000 annually to do a job, right? that means that your throughput is going to be about $120,000 to $200,000 worth of work for the company, because we have to pay you, but we also have to, the company also has to make money. That doesn't mean that that's all they can afford. I mean, the worst that they can say is no. That's the worst they can say is they're not going to be like, you know what, give me that back. You're not hired. Get out of here. Like if that is, you don't want to work with them anyways. The process of negotiating salary, it takes time, but typically whatever they offer you, like I for me personally, I have a rule of always asking for 15% more than what they offer, and at worst they'll say no. At best they'll say sure, 15%, that's fine, whatever. Then you can be like, well, damn, I should have asked for more because they were so good to agree to it. But typically, yeah, it should always be if you're not comfortable with like if you're comfortable with it, don't ask for more if you're comfortable. If a junior developer, if someone offers you $90,000, you should take it and be very happy with that. That's a very good number. But if you're looking for, it doesn't hurt to be like, well, hey, could I, maybe get like 95? Could I maybe get 100? And they, sometimes they might. I mean, I'm not responsible for the salary discussions on there. I don't know what you guys get made. What that's between you and the HR people. But typically, I always tell them like, hey, like unless you're 100% happy with the amount of with the offer that we give you, just make sure that you're happy. Right? That's the important thing. Any other questions? In the back, yeah.
How long does it take for you to pursue your investment in a junior, right?
Yeah.
6 months, they're up to snuff, but hopefully they're worth it before then.
So yeah, so basically, we can gauge junior developers based on their workload. Typically, by 6 months, you should be at a point where you should be able to come in on a Monday, look at your tickets, and then work without bothering a lot of people. That doesn't mean that after 6 months you better not come ask me a damn question or like come to my desk and bother me. That's not the case at all. You should still be asking questions, but the question should be more like your first week might be, hey, I'm trying to pull from this GitHub repo, but it's not letting me pull. I don't know what to do. It should go from those kinds of questions to, hey, I'm trying to create like a submodule in Git, and I've never done it before. Can you help me out? Stuff like that. So always ask questions. 6 months, stop asking questions. It's just you should at that point you be able to come and do a complete 8-hour day without talking or asking questions or something. But it doesn't mean you have to know everything. If that makes sense. Should I clarify it a little more? Or?
No, you were talking about numbers earlier, and like you said that the 60,000 guy will make about 120.
That's just a rough number. That's not like an actual I'm not like a financial guy. I'm just giving an example. Like when you work for any company and they hire you for a certain salary, they're hiring you because you're gonna make them. They're hiring you because you're gonna make the money, and they want to get the most bang for their buck, right? And some companies are real jerks about it, and they'll be like, the best I can do is like 30,000. That's the best I can do. But they're like, but then their CEO rolls up with a Porsche, or they're talking about buying a brand new mansion or whatever. Always negotiate for stuff like that. But these aren't hard numbers. Your value, like junior developers, whether you're junior, mid-level, or senior, you're valuable. You're important to the company. You're an asset to the company. Even if we're teaching you, you're still an asset to the company because you might be a junior now, but in 5 years you might be, a manager, or you might be a senior developer, or you might be the best guy to have on the team because you're always dependable. So you're always a valuable asset. Never let a company discern a junior developer as like somebody that's, below them, because you're not. You're a valuable asset. You're worth it to them. And if that company doesn't see the worth or value in you, you need to go to a company that finds their worth and value, that are willing to work with you. Yes.
How much of the work is done on site versus remote?
All of our work. It depends. So our company, we're all in-house. So we all go to an office Monday through Friday. But our remote work our company is very lax with remote work. So if you need to work from home, I work from home a couple of days out of the week, just because I have other stuff going on, or I just don't want to drive to work that day. Like we're very, very lax about it. But we're not like a fully 100% remote company.
I'm just curious to companies that have policies about it.
Yeah, a lot of companies are very strict on like you need to come in and work 9 to 5 every single day, and like even if you're dead, don't come to work. We're more like if you're coughing and you don't feel like you want to come into work, just let us know. If you're sick, take a break. If you want to work, if you want to continue working and you're contagious, stay the hell away from us and just. So that's kind of how that goes. I think I kind of went a little bit over, but I'm still more than happy answering any questions you guys have. I think at this point, I think the official talk or the lecture is over. But if you guys want to continue to ask questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions you guys may have, or if you guys just want to talk, I'm here for some time.
Well, thank you everyone for coming.